Welcome to the Facts Over Fandom Show. I am your host, Professor Brandon Podgorski, Professor of Sport Leadership and Management. And here at the Facts Over Fandom Show, what I like to do is look at sport and look at the leadership lessons that we can learn in sport, especially with this new season. So first season in 2023, I looked at the business of sport. Now I like to look at the leadership aspect of sports because that's what I do for a living now. And so this episode, the past two episodes before this, and I just do this show when it's convenient for me. This is just fun. It's just a hobby. You can check me out. It's on YouTube. It's on Spotify. And then I've got my blog and X account. All that's linked, I think, in the show notes if you want to check that out. But this is just kind of fun and a hobby for me, so I don't do it regularly. But when I have time, I like to come on and I like to talk about what I'm seeing out there in the sports universe. And in the past two episodes, I focus on youth sport. I kind of gave you the diagnosis 2 episodes ago, what I see, what's happening, what's going on, and what's wrong in youth sport. And then I gave you what I feel is the solution in the last episode, and how we can effectively coach kids and make youth sports a great opportunity and a great experience for kids. Today, I want to continue to go down a similar road, a different road, but a similar road. It's not fun to talk about the negatives of sport. It's easy to do, and it gets clicks, it gets listens. It's certainly not difficult, but I want to talk about positives of sport. What can we do to use sport for good? I think a lot of you probably listening to the show were former athletes, maybe as kids growing up. And I always say, I'm at peak happiness right now as a husband and a dad. But if I had to go back in time, non-husband, non-dad time in my life, I'd go back to being maybe 10, 11, 12 years old, growing up, playing baseball with my friends, playing Little League, or just being out in the neighborhood with them, playing football or baseball, basketball, whatever it was, because I just had such a great experience. Sport taught me so much. It gave me friends. It taught me leadership skills, conflict management skills, gave me confidence. It gave me a kind of a mountain to climb. It gave me a challenge that I was able to overcome. And when I didn't, I was able to learn really valuable life lessons through that. It made me coachable. It made me a little tougher, right? So sports has such a great effect on our life. Doesn't mean that it's perfect. I don't think there's anything that is. But, for me, as somebody who grew up playing sports and then was a coach and now looks at it from a research lens, I see so many good things with sport. And so this is going to kind of segue into a personal experience that I'm going through right now, and one that I wanted to share as I try to keep this episode at around 10 minutes. I want to try to keep my episodes around 10 minutes, but the last 2 I got rolling. What are you going to do, right? But Tuesday morning I wake up, and I got an email that I've been waiting on for a long time. And it is that I got an entry into the 2026 Tokyo Marathon as a charity runner. And I'm going to be running the Tokyo Marathon as a charity runner for the Special Olympics. And so what this episode's going to do, it's going to kind of take these 2 things. 1, running for charity. 2, the Special Olympics. And use these as a backdrop of how we can use sport for good. So a little bit of background first before we get started. I've got a bucket list, and my bucket list is to run all 6 of the Abbott World Major Marathons. And so there's 6 of them. I've ran 4. I ran Chicago, and that was my first marathon in 2015. I've ran New York City, ran Berlin, ran London. That was my most recent marathon. That was in 2022. I should know that. I think it was 2022. And then I'm going to be running Tokyo. So that means I only have Boston to go. Now, you can get into these marathons a few different ways. You can qualify on time. I can't do that. I'm built like a small forward. I'm 6'3", 210, 215, just depending if it's the winter or not. And I've had a bunch of Christmas cookies. I I used to be somewhat fast. I started getting into endurance sports in my late 20s. And, I'd say my first 5, 6, 7 years, I was decently fast. I did some running events and some triathlons, all short, nothing longer than a half marathon, nothing longer than a sprint triathlon. And then in 2015, I decided I wanted to do the big boy. I wanted to take on the marathon. And it's tough. I mean, half marathon is really hard. Run a half marathon and immediately go run it again. I mean, it is hard. The marathon is hard. And it just takes its toll on me at about mile 20. So not real fast. So I'm not going to qualify for time. You can get like sponsors exemptions. Well, I'm not a pro athlete and I don't give a bunch of money. You can win lotteries. That's how I got into Chicago. That's how I got into New York. Or you could be a charity runner. So I was a charity runner for Berlin in 2017. My wife and I, we ran for the Make-A-Wish Foundation and raised around $1,500 for them. And then in 2020, I was a charity runner for the London Marathon and I ran for the Upward Bound Trust. And I can't remember, that was $2,000, $2,500, something like that. And now I get to run for the Special Olympics in Tokyo. And I've got a fundraising goal of $1,400. Now the fundraising, the way they do it in Tokyo is a little bit different. I won't go into the weeds about it, but I'm trying to raise $1,400 by August 7th. That's the goal. So if you're listening to this, I'm going to keep the link here. If you're watching on YouTube or if you're watching on Spotify, I also upload the video to Spotify. So Spotify or YouTube, watch either one, Facts Over Fandom. You can see the link right there to donate if you're able to donate. If not, that's okay. Please share this. Pray for me as I try to use sport for good. So that kind of gives you an idea of why I think sport can be used for good, or at least it sets up the rest of the episode. Yes, selfishly, I think if you're cynical, you could say, selfishly, I'm a charity runner because I want to run all 6 world majors. That's fair. I don't think you're completely accurate. I mean, yeah, the chance to be a charity runner means that I can reach my personal goal, but I'm choosing to be a charity runner. If I wanted to, I could just continue to try the lotteries and not raise money. And I'm also choosing which charities I want to work with. I'm not just sending out applications everywhere. I find one that I find aligns with my values, and that's the one I want to run. I have been trying to be a charity runner for the Tokyo Marathon for years. I tried for other marathons to be a charity runner and got rejected for whatever reason. They've got tons of people trying to apply who are trying to fundraise for them, right? And sometimes maybe it just wasn't a good fit, right? If I'm going to do this and I'm going to run and I'm going to do a charity, it's got to be something that I believe in. And I believe in the Special Olympics. And so I want to give you a little bit of background about the Special Olympics and then talk about, the charity aspect of it and how we can use sport for good. So if you're not familiar with the Special Olympics, it is an organization that provides athletic opportunities, kind of like the Olympics, but provides athletic opportunities for people with intellectual disabilities. Now, you also have the Paralympics, and sometimes these two can get confused, right? The Paralympics, which you see, so the Olympics, they come to town. You have the Olympics for about 16 weeks, 18 weeks, and then they leave. And then a couple weeks later, the Paralympics comes to town, and they do a lot of the same events that are obviously modified for those with some type of physical impairment. But the Paralympic is for athletes with the physical impairment. We see a lot of our wounded warriors, and God bless them, who still are in great shape and are obviously competitive people, and they can't serve anymore because maybe they lost a limb in combat, or maybe they had some other traumatic injury happen to them in combat, but they still have that desire to use their physical gifts. And the Paralympics is a way for them to do that. So you'll see things like they may modify a sport. So instead of hockey on skates, they'll do sled hockey, right? So that's an example of the Paralympics. This is not that. The Special Olympics, completely different. The Special Olympics, again, are for those with an intellectual intellectual disability. And it started back in the 50s and early 60s with Eunice Kennedy Shriver. Yes, from the famous Kennedy and Shriver families. And she had a sister with an intellectual diabetes. I see disabilities, I think diabetes, with an intellectual disability. And so she sees her sister and she sees other children with these intellectual disabilities, and they didn't have a place to go. They didn't have a place to play. Again, this is the 60s, 50s, 60s. We didn't have specialized playgrounds like you could find in a lot of neighborhoods now. We didn't have organizations, or the amount of organizations that we have now, like Unified Sport, that children with an intellectual disability can get into. Right? So she decided, hey, I'm going to do my own thing. And she opened up her own backyard and started a summer day camp where children with these intellectual disabilities, they could learn what they could do, not what they can't, because a lot of people will tell these kids and these people, well, you can't do this, can't do that, can't do this, right? Instead, she's going to say, hey, this is what you can do, and we're going to give you an opportunity here. Right? And then that grew. And so in 1968, she held the first international Special Olympic Summer Games. And it was in Chicago at Soldier Field. 1968 in Chicago and Soldier Field had over 1,000 athletes from the United States and Canada. So they had a torch lighting ceremony and they had over 200 events. And it was really this revolutionary moment in sport and really kind of in human dignity, especially for people with any type of intellectual disability. And so today, the Special Olympics, it reaches 1.7, almost 2 million athletes in 185 countries. They offer far more than games, though. It creates an opportunity for friendship, confidence, joy for children and adults. It's not just limited to children, but and adults for intellectual disabilities. So for me, why this aligns with what I think sport is great, as a father and a sport management professor, I believe in that power for sport to transform lives. It did for me. I grew up playing sports, knew I was never going to be a pro athlete, wanted to be a pro athlete. I mean, I got my Cubs cup right here. I still think I'm 45 years old and still think they're going to call me to play second base, right? But I knew I'd never be a pro athlete, but I love sports, and now that's my job. My full-time job as a professor is to research sport and to talk sport and to teach sport. And then I got a little part-time job on the side where I work with a couple pro sports teams where I get to do stats for them, right? So that keeps me involved in the game, right? This is the same thing for these kids and the adults, right? Sport has the power to transform their lives. Right? In the Special Olympics, it's the ultimate example of that belief in action. It reminds all of us that sport, it's for everyone. And it's up to us as leaders to build those environments where every athlete can feel seen, valued, celebrated. And again, it just goes back to all the great things that we get from sport, whether it be confidence, discipline, that sense of achievement. Everybody deserves that. And sometimes, to kind of steal a phrase from Christianese, we need to meet people where they're at and provide those opportunities. And that's why I'm really excited to run for the Special Olympics, because we're going to be helping kids and adults with those intellectual disabilities to experience the power of sport. Okay? So that's one part of it. How can we use sport for good? The other part that I want to talk about is kind of this charity aspect with a lot of marathons, especially these world major marathons, where you can run as a charity runner, and they raise a ton of money across many different types of charities. So, for an example, 2025 Tokyo Marathon raised over 1.1 billion yen in charity giving. That was the most ever, and that was 2025. So many people want to get those 6 stars, right? Or want to say they ran the Tokyo Marathon, the New York City Marathon, the Boston Marathon, whatever it is. And since it's inception of the charity program for the Tokyo Marathon, it's raised over 5.8 billion yen. So, helping with causes for kids, whether it be kids with food insecurity, kids going through health issues, kids with intellectual disabilities, whether it's helping just adults, here in the States, it could be Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, the American Heart Association, right? All these different charities using running as a way to help people. It's great. It's beautiful. It's a way that sport brings people together for good. So from an academic side, just some takeaways that I look at this, and one of the things I used to teach on was sport for special population, whether it be older adults or people with intellectual or physical disability. Sport has the opportunity to help them feel empowered and connected. And especially as we get older, that sense of connectedness is really, really important. Pickleball is taking over the world right now. And I think for a lot of older adults, you want to compete and you want to do your best, but hey, it gives me a sense of connectedness. Right. As you get older, you don't worry as much about competing and worry as much about winning because your body's only going to be able to let you do so much. Right. But now I've got that connectedness. For those with an intellectual or physical disability who may feel alienated, people don't look like me. People don't act like me. Right. Everybody's telling me I can't do this. I can't do this sport or I can't work this job or whatever it is. Now I've got community. There are people who look like me. There are people who understand what it is that I'm going through. And now I've got that chance to have that community there, right? It's a really powerful thing that sport can do. Right? So, movements like the Special Olympics, the Paralympics, the Americans with Disabilities Act that was passed in 1990, those have really changed what's possible for people who are having any type of disability to now contribute to society and have just a higher sense of self-worth. So us as coaches, teachers, just everyday people, we have a responsibility to build these inclusive environments. And I really kind of focus a lot on kids, again, just because I'm a dad and I coach my son and he's 6 years old. But I think about that with kids all the time. What can I do as a coach? Like my son's getting ready to play football here in the next couple months. What can I do as a coach to make sure that it's inclusive? Because you're going to have some kids, when you're dealing with 6, 7, 8-year-olds, you got some kids who are up here who are really, really good, and they've just matured a little bit sooner, or maybe they started sport a little bit sooner. And you got some kids here who are just scared, who are just kind of scared to be here, right? So, again, we need to make sure that we're making it inclusive and giving every kid a chance to succeed. That's really important. Right? So if you can, again, the link is below. If you're able to donate, that would be great. The $1,400, it all goes to the Special Olympics. None of it is coming to me. I set up a Give, Sim, Go because the way the Tokyo Marathon works, people who are donating don't donate directly to the charity. They donate to the person, and then that's passed on to the charity. That's different from any other marathon I've done, but I can assure you, any money that comes to me, it's going to the Special Olympics. You are not paying for my travel. You're not paying for clothes, food, hotel. You are not paying for any of that, right? So, if you're thinking about donating, thank you so much. I do appreciate that. This will probably be the only time, I don't know, maybe not, but probably the only time that I ask. So as always, just want to thank you for listening. Hey, think about your own journey for sport. How can you use it for good? Get out there and coach, get out there and volunteer, get out there to support those programs like the Special Olympics that are helping make sport more inclusive. As always, love God, love each other, be a good sport. I'll see you next time.